It is Thursday, March 14th, 2024, and there has been an update in the ongoing investigation into the death of Nex Benedict. Yesterday, the medical examiner's office released a summary report to the public. A more detailed version of the report is slated to be released on March 27th. This summary report tells us two things. The first, the medical examiner has ruled the manner of death as suicide, and second, the probable cause of death is listed as diphenhydramine and fluoxetine combined toxicity. Now, many folks out there feel this is the end to this story, but unfortunately, this is leaving me and a lot of other people with a few lingering questions. Now, please remember that I am not a medical or legal professional of any kind. Therefore, I have spent the better part of the last day asking various medical and legal contacts to help me understand what we are seeing. This is the best summation I can make based on the information available to me. First, let's contextualize what we have been told. Diphenhydramine is an over-the-counter antihistamine and sedative. You've probably encountered it as the allergy medication Benadryl, but you may have also seen it packaged as the sleeping aids Unisom or ZzzQuil. I've got some here, it's the same medication. Fluoxetine, also known as Prozac, is an SSRI antidepressant. We knew that Nex took this medication regularly from the second 911 call where Sue Benedict, Nex's guardian, relays that information to the operator so that the paramedics would know when they arrived. In order for a medical examiner to make the determination that the manner of death was suicide, it requires that the death be established as both self-inflicted and intentional. It's that last part that has quite a few people asking more questions. Now, from my understanding, the Benedict family and their attorneys are going to seek a second opinion, and there is still the possibility the FBI will be getting involved. I do not believe yesterday's release or the upcoming release on the 27th will be the last we hear about this investigation. Let's talk about those lingering questions. First, I want to acknowledge that many queer voices have been quick to point out that the statements from police and the medical examiner have both been at odds and have changed a few times since the story came to public attention. Allegedly, sources close to Owasso police claim that the department wanted to run with the cause of death being a fentanyl overdose, long before the autopsy had been performed. This claim seemed to also pop up on a number of conservative-leaning corners of the internet. There is a well-founded mistrust between the queer community, indeed marginalized communities of all types, and the police, as well as other institutions of power, that I want to acknowledge before proceeding further. For the purposes of this video, however, I want to take everything we have been told at face value in order to illustrate why there are still additional questions. It needs to be stated quite clearly that much of this is conjecture, as we do not, and possibly will never, have all of the facts. Diphenhydramine is a fairly safe over-the-counter medication. You do not need to be a particular age to purchase it. In fact, it's the first prescription antihistamine that was approved by the FDA all the way back in 1946. It also shares a fairly unique relationship with fluoxetine, as in the 1960s, diphenhydramine was found to weakly inhibit reuptake of the neurotransmitter serotonin. This discovery led to a search for viable antidepressants with similar structures and fewer side effects, culminating in the invention of fluoxetine. Too much of diphenhydramine can cause negative side effects. It has been abused recreationally to induce euphoria, and in extreme cases it can cause death. The medical examiner's report does not list any quantities of the diphenhydramine or fluoxetine found present in Nex's system. Most curious is the listing of diphenhydramine and fluoxetine toxicity, making me wonder if the examiner's claim is they worked in concert to cause Nex's death. I was able to find an article written by Joe Graydon, a pharmacologist, who said that in rare cases, these two medications can work together to cause serotonin syndrome, which is a group of symptoms that may occur with the use of certain serotonergic medications. In severe but rare cases, serotonin syndrome can be fatal. With appropriate medical intervention, the risk of death is low, likely less than 1%. We know that Sue disclosed the use of fluoxetine to the 911 operator the morning of Nex's death. Sue did not disclose diphenhydramine, meaning it is absolutely possible that if it was taken without Sue's knowledge. Now, why the questions? For this to be considered suicide and not an accident, the medical examiner must believe the person intended their actions to end their life. There is every possibility that after an extremely stressful day, Nex was having trouble sleeping and reached for ZzzQuil or Unisom, and was perhaps unaware of the potential side effects with their own prescribed medication. Perhaps a second autopsy or a release of a toxicology report will give us clarification as to how this moved from accidental to intentional in the medical examiner's mind. But let's say that the worst possible version of this is correct, that enough Benadryl was consumed with the desire to go to sleep and not wake up. That only makes me more curious about what drove Nex to that point. How much bullying was overlooked by the school, the family even, any adult around Nex, and for how long? Did the school have any consideration for the fact that not only was Nex queer, but also neurodivergent? And was that considered when determining what type of punishment was appropriate for bringing a vape to school? I understand that public schools are underfunded, demonized, and stretched thin, but was there any consideration of placing a queer neurodivergent kid in an isolated environment where they may not have had the healthiest coping mechanisms, and then allow them to continue to be on the receiving end of bullying for several days, which resulted in Nex filling a bottle of water and splashing some on one girl one time? And while we're on the subject of public schools and demonization, this news story has brought to the surface the fact that a hostile outside force who does not live in or have any personal ties to Oklahoma has been brought in to help determine what books should and should not be allowed on school shelves. This outside voice has repeatedly targeted faculty at Nex's school and another local school a few minutes away with homophobic and transphobic hysteria that resulted in job loss, stochastic terrorism, and days on end of bomb threats. I think it is a worthy and worthwhile conversation to interrogate whether outside parties getting involved in local matters in order to whip up hysteria for their own agenda is something we want to continue to see in education or in politics. I hear many folks saying they think they know what's best for their children, but if that's the case, why are you letting a woman with no expertise in any area of education or childhood development tell you what's best for your children? Shouldn't you be listening to experts? There is going to be a lot more to this story, and as more details are released, I'll be here to help provide as much context and nuance as I can. Hope this helps.